Good afternoon. Welcome to the October 30th meeting of the Columbia Rotary Club. We finally have a piano, so we're going to go ahead and get started with Jim Smithwick and Rusty DePass.
Thank you. Please join me just for a moment, okay? Oh God, as we gather together, we would like to thank you for the gifts and talents you have given each one of us. We are also very grateful for the various passions you have placed in our hearts to care for others in our community, our state, our world, through this Rotary community. And thank you for your love, your care, and your guidance for our individual lives. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen.
All right, I hope everybody's having a great Monday so far. If you'll look at the card buckets on your tables, everybody please hold up your card bucket. Make sure to throw a little change in there, clean out the bottom of your pocketbooks, clean out your pockets, put it in there. It's all for a very good cause. Now I'm going to call up Amanda Strickland. She's been our greeter for most of the month of October, and she's doing a very good job with this, as the committee chair, I suppose, with this. And so if you're interested in greeting, you need to see this gal, and she's going to introduce our visiting Rotarians and guests.
Good afternoon. As Carrie said, I'm Amanda Strickland. I'm with Hill Construction. And we sent out an email last week, maybe, about greetings. We still have a couple of months left to greet. A couple of months in the spring and also January. So I really appreciate everybody who has volunteered. And we don't have any visiting Rotarians today, but does anyone have any guests?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi everybody, I'm Cynthia Benson. I know you've heard my name a lot recently. I haven't been here, so it's nice to see you all again. I brought with me Macy, who is my brand new social media manager with Cutthroat Marketing. She is our graphic designer, and she is now in charge of weekly social media posts. So if you guys want a custom marketing plan, please give us a call. And then I also have here Deb Mullen from debmullen.com, and she is a relationship and social media marketing manager.
Hi, Jerry Bright. As some of you know, I broke my hip and I had to rely on the chauffeurs. Today my chauffeur is my wife, Pat.
I'm Lane Ligon, and my guest today is Press Foxworth, an independent insurance agent here in Columbia.
Okay, Thank you so much, and welcome to our guest, and I hope everybody has a great Monday.
All right, so we've been talking about ringing the bell, and I know that that Jack has probably harassed everyone in this room to take on one of his days. If you have not signed up to ring the bell, please consider doing so. I have 2 days that I'm responsible for, and most of the folks that are ringing on my days, I just put it out on Facebook, and I filled up my days pretty quickly. So all the days have captains. That list is on the website. Am I taking your thunder here?
No, you don't like it.
So on the table, Libby has put the list of the captains and the dates that they're responsible for. And so there are a lot of folks in this room who are, have little shifts that are available. So please, if you have not signed up to do it, find a time that works best for you, and let's do some community service. And I also have to say hello to Jason Snyder, who I have not seen in a very long time. Welcome back to Rotary. So glad to have you back. All right, so now we have a treat, because I'm going to ask Ms. Lee Lumpkin to come up here and talk about her Rotary moment. And we all know that Lee is so fun to listen to. So you come on up
You're
here.
so sweet. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here and to have these few moments. As most of you know, I have had a wonderful life. I've been married to Mike Lumpkin for 32 years. We started life a little later. At 38, I had our daughter, and at 45, we adopted our son. So our journey was a little unconventional, as has theirs been, but we're so proud of both of our children. And I think you learn as a parent, their journey and their path is theirs. I don't know of any greater blessing that I had in my life than the parents I had. They were both so generous in life and in death. And we were from a very, very small town in Kentucky of 5,000. But I always felt like we had a lot. And Daddy and Mother always said, to whom much is given, much is expected. We certainly were not wealthy. But we had an interesting family in that my father had a brother 28 years older than he was. So the first 5 siblings actually only got from 7th to the 8th grade. And then the final 2 siblings became lawyers. But I was always so intrigued at how innovative and inventive and how very fascinating those were that were not formally educated. And as life would have it, it would be those aunts and those uncles who finished 2nd through 8th that sent all the nieces and nephews to college. And I always remember my uncle standing in the doorway saying, don't forget, I only finished 2nd grade as everybody headed off to UVA, and I headed to Missouri to a small girls' school, which was amazing, to Stevens, and later to do my graduate work at Georgia State. And my life has been so exciting and interesting, and that's what has made this slice of humanity so intriguing to me, because I'm from a small town. I went to small schools. My family, we are small business people. Everything's small. I have a little dress shop I've had for 40 years. I'm part of a wonderful small ballet company. And when you're part of all that, you find out that only a few people, as Jack can attest to, have to do everything. And I'm the only person that even works in my store. So I've never been part of a big organization. So being part of Rotary has given me such a different perspective on life, and I'm so small business oriented. I've not really been corporate in my thinking, but I've watched what the corporate can do hand in hand with small business, and watching us interchange in what we both bring to the table and how significant it is. And I've actually learned that from Rotary. And what I want to say is that I know we have a diligent board and president who gives so much of themselves. And sometimes it may seem like some of us are at the table and we sit, but everything you say to me impacts me. It may not this week, but it might next year. And I think of being here and Catherine telling me about needs at Palmetto Health, and Libby telling me about something called Children's Garden, and Carrie introducing to us Miss Aaliyah from Heroes in Blue, and then I only knew about all this from here. And I went to the ballet. They choose a beneficiary every year, and each of those things they're choosing to salute. They don't get thousands of dollars from the ballet, but they get a few thousand, and with a little bit, they can still do something. And that's what I've learned from you. Maybe we can only ring the bell once. Maybe we can only do that once, but you multiply. We can only put $1 in the bucket, but so what? You multiply, and look what we get. So that's the perspective you've given me. I'm still so much about small, but you made me understand how marvelous big can be. I'm not real international in the way I think about things, but you have given me that as well. But what you do locally and what we will continue to do step by step, to me, is just amazing. So today I want to thank Lanier for being my sponsor. I want to thank Libby for introducing me to all this wonderment. And I want to thank Jack Sloan. Before 2008, my mom had 9 strokes, and I knew I just couldn't do this. So right after my mother died, I returned to town. I was having my nails done. And Jack Sloan entered the salon, filled out the application, said, time for you and new beginnings. And I'm so glad he did. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee. All right, so we've been doing these Discover Rotary moments for several, I guess, a couple of months now. So if you haven't done that, Libby is taking care of that. So if you'd like to get up here and talk about what Rotary means to you, we'd all like to hear that, and Libby will reach out to you. Now we've got Health and Happiness with the delightful Miss Catherine Davis, and I know that she'll have some great stuff for us for that as well. Come on up, Catherine.
Good afternoon. We've got some great news today, and it's all about football and a little bit about baseball. But hey, all you Gamecock fans, stand up and clap your hands. Hey, all you Clemson fans, Clemson Tigers, yes, beat Georgia Tech. Stand up and clap your hands. All right, here's a good one. Hey, all you Bulldog fans who whipped the Gators. Please, Bulldog fans, just give them credit if you're in support. All right, then, those Wofford Terriers, stand up if you are a fan, because you beat those East Tennessee. And we got some Benedict Tiger fans who, yay, beat all Benedict State. All right, that makes them 6-1. Ooh, that's great. Okay. And I don't know how many of you saw the World Series game. The who? Citadel. Well, what about the Citadel? Do they need to stand up and clap their hands? Let's Citadel stand up and clap their hands. Okay, now that's it. All right. If you saw the World Series game last night, clap your hands.
Not all of them.
You looked at it? Oh, were you surprised by the outcome? Not even. Go Houston. All right. I do have one more bit of good news. David Campbell is here. Please stand up. David Campbell. There's David Campbell. I want you to know that he was awarded the Professional of the Year by the Association of Fundraising Professionals. Congratulations, David. Okay, everybody knows what today is. Halloween Eve. Halloween is tomorrow, and the day after that is
Saints Day.
Dia de los Muertos. Day of the Dead. Celebrate and make and give tribute to all those who have passed on. It's quite different from our celebration of Halloween, where we trick or treat and have bonfires and dress up in costumes and visit haunted houses and carve jack-o'-lanterns. But at any rate, there are 2 days that are quite different, came from different histories. And I gave you that history last year, and I'm not getting into that. I don't know why I get asked to do this on Halloween every year. It's because Rusty asked me, I'm sure. I'm sure of it. But at least you'll get to be who you really are tomorrow. So, that's, the witches fly across the sky. The owls go, ooh, ooh, ooh. The black cats yowl, and green ghosts howl. Scary Halloween to you. Happy Halloween. Eye of newt and toe of frog, wool of bat and tongue of dog, adder's fork and blind worm's sting, lizard's leg and owlet's wing, for a charm of powerful trouble, like a ball in bubble. That's a William Shakespeare piece. Anyway, moving on. I know you know the difference between good and bad, and I'm not going to prolong this because we want to hear Dr. Hardee today. I just lost my name. This is my creepy tape, which should be right here. It's about two evil brothers. And guess what? You know, I couldn't resist. It's two evil brothers and the new pastor. There were two evil brothers. They were rich and used their money to keep their ways from the public eye. They even attended the same church and looked to be perfect Christians. Then their pastor retired and a new one was hired. Not only could he see right through the brothers' deception, but he also spoke well and spoke true, and the church started to grow immensely in numbers. So much so that a fundraising campaign was started to build a new place to assemble the congregation. All of a sudden, one of the evil brothers died. The remaining brother sought out the new pastor the day before the funeral and handed him a check for the amount needed to finish paying for the new building. I have only one condition, the brother said. At my brother's funeral, you must say, my brother was a saint. The pastor gave his word and deposited the check. The next day, at the funeral, the pastor did not hold back. He was an evil man, he said. He cheated on his wife and abused his family. He was no good to the community. The pastor went on and on in this vein for a while, and finally he concluded with, but compared to his brother, he was a saint. Have a great and safe Halloween tomorrow.
Catherine, that was much better than Rusty DePass's rendition of, oh, it turned on. Is it back on now? Okay. So that was better, much better than Rusty DePass's rendition of the flu that we got last week during Holiday Happiness, which was a little weird. Although, I hope everybody got their flu shots because of that. All right, I have a little bit of housekeeping before we get to our speaker. Debbie will be sending out statements tomorrow, and we send those out via email. And for those of you that are not real active in your email, or you get a lot of emails, just be looking for those statements in your inboxes. Don't let them get buried and pushed to the side, and I'll keep reminding you. So now I'm going to go ahead and ask Randolph Shives to come up here and introduce our speaker.
Don't know that Dr. Hardee or I would have agreed to do this if we'd known we were following Catherine's lead. We'll have lots of wonderful energy. Dr. Tim Hardee serves as president of the South Carolina Technical College System. He has over 30 years' experience in education throughout the state of South Carolina. Before taking the helm of the system, he served as president of Central Carolina Technical College, He has also served as a teacher, coach, counselor, and principal at the K through 12 level. Dr. Hardee graduated with a BS in psychology from Coastal Carolina University, holds a Master of Education in Counselor Education and a Doctor of Education in Educational Administration from the University of South Carolina. Dr. Hardee has served on numerous boards and councils dedicated to the furthering of the community and the state through education, workforce development, and economic development. He is a graduate of Leadership South Carolina and the South Carolina Economic Developers Program. Dr. Hardee was presented with the Coastal Carolina University Outstanding Alumni Award and the Sumter Chamber of Commerce Outstanding Achievement Award. Please welcome Dr. Tim Hardee.
Thank you for the opportunity to join you today for a few minutes. I did have an opportunity before, after the meal, to talk a little bit with Danny about his wife in Midlands. Also Stephen in terms of our Sumter connection. I enjoyed that a little bit. I thought I'd start with, since tomorrow is Halloween, and you just had an opportunity to enjoy lunch. What does a skeleton order from a restaurant menu? Spare ribs. All right. Okay. If you will take a look at the slide here that you have. You go with spare ribs. Any presentation I give on behalf of the technical college system, I think centers around our three pieces here of affordable, accessible, and relevant. What we provide for South Carolinians through our 16 technical colleges in the system office has to continue to be affordable for the citizens, also accessible in terms of we serve a little over 225,000 residents of the state each year. And then the relevant piece speaks to we actually produce skilled employees for the workforce in the state of South Carolina. One of the pieces here with this slide that you'll see if you start on your left, my right, we teach English, history, math, science courses to those South Carolina citizens in terms of the higher education and how we partner with four-year institutions across the state. So it does start with higher education, but the reality is it moves into how that develops the workforce for the state of South Carolina. Employers that I speak with across the state are not interested in just having an employee. They're interested in a skilled employee. And there's a difference there. The manufacturing of today requires a highly skilled individual for us to be able to produce that for our employees across the state and make sure they're going out into the BMWs and the Volvos and the Boeings and Mercedes-Benz vans across the state. They need a highly skilled, technically trained individual. But with the workforce, what that then brings is economic development, which is the third piece for us as a state. When I was in Sumter, serving as president there for 10 years, Sumter was a community that there was always conversation about when is Olive Garden and Target and Starbucks coming to Sumter. And the conversation evolved around, well, those things happen when the per capita income increases. That's what brings the Targets and the Starbucks. And the Olive Garden from that standpoint. They do have the Starbucks now, so we did see some progress in the time there. But I say that in terms of every time we graduate about 100 nurses there when I served as president each year. Think of what that does in terms of economic development in the community. When you take 100 nurses, around $50,000 a year starting salary, bring them into the community, that raises the per capita income for that community, which is obviously great for the economic development capacity there. And then finally, quality of life. One of the interesting stories I came across during the time I was there in Sumter was a young man that was one of our nursing graduates, and he talked with me a little bit. At one of the nursing ceremonies, the pinning ceremony, Daniel was a young man that was a nursing graduate, and I said, Daniel, what does this mean to you, being a graduate of the nursing program? He said, well, Dr. Hardee, interesting piece is I'll go to work over at Toomey. I've already got a job lined up. This will be a great opportunity. He said, but really, if you think about it, the difference is how it's going to change the lives of my two daughters. He said, my two daughters will have opportunities that I didn't until later in life. I'm actually going down to the bank to make a loan on being able to buy a home for the first time. And that's the quality of life piece and how that changes when someone has a good job and when they have an opportunity through something like whether that's a nursing program, a mechatronics program, welding, anything that we happen to produce in terms of the graduates through the technical college system. I mentioned the 225,000 residents that we serve each year, about 117,000 through credit programs, another 111 through the continuing ed that we were talking about a few minutes ago on that side. We have 16 colleges that are located strategically across the state of South Carolina. Sort of an interesting story when the colleges were first came into being back under Governor Hollings in the 60s. He had something called the 100-day promise. And what he did with his 100-day promise is he went up north and they needed to expand their businesses. We had people here in South Carolina that needed jobs, and so what Governor Hollins put in place in the 1960s with the 100-day promise is he told the folks in the north, if you'll come and locate into South Carolina, we'll build your facility within 100 days, and we'll train your workforce within 100 days. That's a pretty tough timeline. I'm glad we aren't held quite to that same 100-day promise right now. It'd be a little tougher with some of the folks that we attract into the state at this point. The flexible through our breadth and depth of programming, I thought it was interesting in terms of Horry, Georgetown, down in the Horry County area near the beach. As you can imagine, they're heavy on tourism, hospitality. That's a lot of the programs that they offer. Up in the Greenville area, a lot of advanced manufacturing. So I mentioned that in terms of that way our 16 colleges around the state really reflect the community. In other words, what does that community need to produce? What type of graduates are you looking for in those areas? And how it can benefit the local community. We really sort of cater that college to meet the needs of that local community. About 61% of our students are female. That's actually a national trend. It's easily, when I was there at Central Carolina, we were at about 68% of our students were actually female. Women do a much better job of accessing higher education and taking advantage of what's available there. And then about 41% of our students are actually minority students from across the state. I did want to share with you a little bit in terms of some numbers. If you look at higher education across the state of South Carolina, 57% of what takes place in South Carolina occurs at one of our 16 technical colleges. That's a huge piece of what we deliver for South Carolina and how those colleges reflect the state as a whole. The 34% is actually our cost, is about a third of what a four-year institution costs in terms of the price, if you will, point of that. I did want to talk a minute with you a little bit about student debt. You hear a lot about the high cost of higher education across the state. Right now, student debt in the United States is $1.4 trillion, big number. Average graduate from a four-year institution in South Carolina graduates now with $30,000 worth of student debt. And another piece to that, U.S. News and World Report about 6 months ago put out an article that in the United States right now, 25 to 35-year-olds in the United States spend more on paying back a student loan than they spend on food. An interesting piece. How that's become a national problem certainly is here in South Carolina as well, but if you think of it in terms of those folks that are paying back those huge student debts, they aren't spending money in the local economy because of the fact that they're graduating and sometimes even not graduating, but they still have the student debt. So that's really an epidemic problem across the nation, and we aren't immune from it here in South Carolina. One of the things that we're working closely with the four-year institutions, we will continue as a technical college system to deliver training for the industries across the state, but we're actually starting to see more and more students because of economics that are choosing to complete the first 2 years of their bachelor's degree with the technical colleges across the state and then transfer that to the four-year institutions. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes, but that's a piece that I think is really driven by the economy. Students are choosing and their parents to see that cost-effective wise, that's a good decision for them to take those first 2 years at the technical college at one of our 16 colleges. and then transfer that across the state. The 96%, it's interesting that as a system, 96% of our students are actually South Carolinians. We serve South Carolina. The technical colleges are built around the idea of serving South Carolinians. We do that through placing the colleges across the state in those 16 locations. And then the 87%, probably to me, is a more important number than any of the rest. That's the placement rate for our students. We follow up on all of our graduates. We will graduate about 17,000 students a year. We follow up a year after graduation. 87% of our graduates a year later are employed in the field that they were trained for. I think that's the accountability piece for us, that are we actually training people for jobs that exist out in those local communities. And we strive very much to try to increase that as much as possible, but we think that's a good indication of are we meeting the needs of those local communities when we actually produce the employees that are needed. This might be a little bit of interest to you in terms of last year in the state of South Carolina, BMW up in the upstate produced 400,000 vehicles. A lot of BMWs. About 250,000 of those were shipped out of the port of Charleston. The rest stay here in the area. Boeing, down in the Charleston region, 12 Dreamliners a month come out of the Boeing facility there. And 100,000 tires a day in the state of South Carolina. We produce more vehicles than any other state in the Union. We also produce more tires than any other state in the Union. So it's an interesting piece that you see those huge numbers in terms of the 400,000 BMWs, 12 Dreamliners, 100,000 tires. That only happens with a skilled workforce. And that's really what the technical college system is geared about. Each one of those, whether it's the BMW facility, Boeing, we as a system have a program called Ready SC. We train those employees when Secretary Hitt attracts a new industry to the state of South Carolina. He sort of convinces them to come to South Carolina. That's when the technical college system steps in and provides the training for them to be able to have that workforce that they need, whether they're building planes or BMWs or tires, whatever that looks like for them as an industry. I did want to talk with you a little bit about, and this is sort of, I thought it was interesting, this is the first group I've shared this with, so I'll see how it goes in terms of really sort of a paradigm shift in the state of South Carolina. If you think of this in terms of how we value the technical college system across the state, and more of a return on investment for the technical college system. If you think of it back in 1967 when NASA put the Apollo rocket, size of a car, $3.5 million each for those computers, several 100,000 addition operations per second, and it had a memory capacity of 1 megabyte. 1967. 2017. We have these handheld devices. iPhone 8's coming out, $699 each, 600 billion operations per second, and 256 gigabytes of memory, 256,000 times what was in the NASA computer, and it's in your pocket. And I think of that in terms of in that period of time, that 50 years, and how technology has changed. And whether it was NASA back in 1967 or each of us as individuals, we use the best technology that's available at the time. And that's how it's changed over those 50 years. Well, think of that in terms of a shift in thinking, sort of what I would call the reality versus the perception of a technical college education. Back in 1967, when the system was beginning, it was geared around manual labor. It was geared around low-paying jobs. It was few opportunities for advancement. It was basically a manual labor job, textile mills, things that were getting people in the door to be able to have a job here in the state of South Carolina. If you move that to 50 years later, the graduates that we produce now, high-paying, high-skilled, high technology, Right now, we actually have more jobs than the skilled workers that we are able to produce. And obviously, the manufacturing facilities, we are highly technology oriented. I'll give you an example. Friday, I was over in Greenville, and the Clemson ICAR campus. Many of you have probably seen it as you go by 85 there. Greenville Technical College actually has what they call a CMI facility. It's the facility that they use there is a Center for Manufacturing Innovation, and it's a part of the Clemson ICAR campus. Basically, Clemson has their automotive engineers there. Greenville Technical College produces the technicians. The two of them work hand in hand. The guy that was giving me a tour on Friday said the idea is to put the engineers together with the technicians, and in time figure out a way to save 30 seconds on producing a BMW. They produce 1,400 of those a day at the BMW facility. Imagine the cost savings if they save 30 seconds on being able to put together a BMW. And those are the pieces that it was interesting. I was there on Friday, didn't have a lot of people in the building. I said, well, you know, what's going on today? I see a few classes. There was a machine tool class. He said, well, most of our classes run Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. The group that's here on Friday, he said, interesting enough, there are apprentices with GE. I said, well, tell me a little bit about, you know, what that is for. He said, well, what GE does is here in the upstate, they take 500 applications from high school seniors. Each year they select 18 out of those 500 people. They send them here to Greenville Technical College to go through our machine tool program. They come to school 20 hours a week. They work there at GE 20 hours a week. They pay them 40 hours a week, pay their tuition, and then they complete the program. They start them at $60,000 a year. That's not bad, 2 years out of high school. No debt, tuition's paid for, guaranteed job with GE, and the reality is that one of the things I thought it was interesting, he said that we can train them to be machine tool graduates. He said actually what we're looking for through the application process is a high school senior that comes to school every day, doesn't have any discipline issues, knows how to follow directions. He said those are the pieces. We can get someone from there to how you can do the machine tool technology piece. Sort of related to that in terms of the change in the perception, I mentioned the apprenticeship piece. We're coming up on the 10th anniversary of apprenticeships here in South Carolina, first week in December, and our communications directors putting together a little video of 10 years of apprenticeship. So they wanted to go back and invited me to go with them down to Beach Island near North Augusta, the Kimberly-Clark plant. And I knew a little bit about Kimberly-Clark plant. They make paper, diapers, Kleenex, that sort of thing. That's really about all I knew until I showed up over there to help with the video piece. And it was interesting, by the time I left, I found out that at the Kimberly-Clark facility there, they have 1,200 employees. They make 1,100 diapers a minute. I was impressed with 1,100 diapers a minute from that standpoint. But there are 1,200 employees there, average salary is $85,000 a year. They're technicians that essentially keep, it was robotics and electronics is really what it amounts to. Highly paid, highly skilled. Now the interesting piece that scared the HR person a bit was he said that over half of their employees would be, were age 55. That's a bit scary to think that about half of your employees are nearing retirement age and they need a plan on how they're going to replace those folks. But certainly I offered the technical college system as a way to help him out with making sure we get those folks trained and coming in. But I mentioned those two examples, the GE up in Greenville and the Kimberly-Clark down in the Aiken area, just to give you an example of how that's changed in that 50 years and how those extremely high-paying jobs are available for really a high school student that 2 years out of high school is able to have a very high-paying job that can take care of their family. Back to my early point about quality of life, if you have a 20-year-old that's a starting salary at $60,000 a year, your quality of life does pretty well quickly from that standpoint. And then a little bit in terms of how do we actually address that. Across the state, I saw your social media piece that you were introducing a few minutes ago with your folks. One of the things you have to do when you're trying to develop a workforce, we have this imadeitsc.com. You have to attract 16-year-olds into how do you get them to want to come into the technical college system. We certainly try to do that through the use of social media. Other ideas of working with guidance counselors around the state. We have about 10,000 high school students that are right now in dual enrollment programs around the state. They're actually earning college credit while they're in high school. It's a good way for them to have credit that will work towards one of our associate degree programs, or in many cases transfer to a four-year institution. Youth apprenticeship. I mentioned earlier I was in Sumter for about 10 years, serving as president there. 2011, Continental Tire announced they were coming to Sumter. 1,700 jobs. At the time when I was president there, we were probably graduating 10 or less mechatronics graduates. When I left last year, 2016, we graduated about 60 mechatronics graduates a year. Those students, through this youth apprenticeship program, attended their local career center in 10th and 11th grade. In the 12th grade, they actually came to Central Carolina, did their first year of an associate degree program while they were a high school senior. 1 year after high school, completed the associate degree, went to work at Continental Tire. They started each one of those at $25 an hour, 1 year out of high school. They're at Continental Tire, and every time we could produce a graduate, they were hired immediately because they were in such demand there. The Pilot Promise Program, we have a few places around the state that we're actually moving towards a model that provides a tuition-free education for students for the first 2 years after high school through the technical college system. I just mentioned that as one of the things we're trying across the state to look at in terms of how do you encourage more students to take advantage of the technical college system. Guaranteed transfer, there's 800 students at Tri-County Technical College that will transfer to Clemson a year after they attend Tri-County. Here in Columbia, Dr. Prestidas works closely with us in terms of his Gamecock Gateway program, actually this same type program that gives students the opportunity to successfully complete the first year at Midland Stack, and then they transfer to USC. And then statewide programs, I mentioned the Ready SC earlier. That's a program we offer across the state. This year we've trained about 4,000 business and industry employees across the state through our Ready SC program. It's actually part of the package that's offered to an industry. I'll use Samsung up in Newberry as an example. They're ramping up. Volvo down in the Charleston, actually Berkeley County. Volvo's a bit of an interesting piece. They announced that they were coming to Berkeley County, 2,000 jobs. We started building a training center for them, started the process of working on these 2,000 employees to come through the technical college system. About a month ago, before they've even built the first Volvo car, they've announced that they're going to expand and have 4,000 employees there instead of 2,000. So massive piece in terms of Berkeley County and jobs in that area. Our apprentices, I mentioned a few minutes earlier how we're really expanding the apprenticeship program across the state. We actually have a little over 26,000 apprentices in the state of South Carolina right now. I just wanted to share some of this information in terms of the programs that we offer, the various ideas that we have across the state. But I thought if I could, since the opportunity presented itself, to maybe open it up for a few questions that any of you might have about the technical college system, what we offer across the state, whether it's the programs that we have for business and industry, anything about the transferability piece, but any questions that you might have, I'd be glad to answer. Yes, sir.
Can I just give you a full-throated endorsement? My niece graduates from USC on December the 18th, and she has never been one to look at money, but when she started school, she said, you know, they got this bridge program, and you know how much money I can save? Good. And she did it, and she's graduating on time. straight through, not a hitch. That is a great program.
Thanks. That's something we're actually starting to, and I think some of it's actually economy driven. We're seeing many parents that come to us with what I would call the price tag of the four-year institution. If you run the math just here in the Columbia area, the student that completes the first 2 years at Midlands Tech and then completes year 3 and 4 with USC, there's about a $30,000 cost savings for that individual student. And I have some interesting conversations with Dr. Pastidas as well. He has done the math and has found that our graduates from Midlands actually have a bit higher GPA than the students that start at USC as a freshman, because I think what we're doing is we're able to, I'll call it, glean the students a bit and send him the best and the brightest, like for Midlands. So, and he also gives me the fact that he doesn't have to build dorms for those students that are starting at Midlands and transferring to USC. He also says even better, they're still a USC graduate, so there's a chance they might donate to USC. Yes?
First, I would like to piggyback off of Jack, because we are both graduates from Midlands Tech, Lynn Higher, and so we appreciate all that you guys have done for the area. We would not have been able to do it, and I've been given great feedback from Tom Ledbetter in his small business incubator he has going there at Midlands Tech too. So thank you guys for that small business that you guys have encouraged in the area, and we're rapidly growing. My question is what programming languages are you looking to provide going forward?
Programming languages, give me a little bit more.
Well, for right now, all that we can find locally is Java, and
Right.
Java is kind of a dying language. So as people who are trying to stay into this field going forward, are you guys looking at expanding to AI-based languages like Python, or are you going to stay more in the front-end development of things?
I could answer yes to that, but then you would probably know that the IT is not my expertise from that side. Let me put it this way. One of the programs that we offer throughout our 16 technical colleges, I'll use Blue Cross and Blue Shield as an example. You tend to think of the programs that we offer across the state are technically oriented through the technical colleges, a lot of healthcare programs. It's interesting, there's about 10,000 employees at Blue Cross and Blue Shield. 300 of their IT employees are actually apprentices with the South Carolina Technical College system. That basically we partner with them to be able to, the languages that you're discussing there, how do we tie that into what Blue Cross and Blue Shield needs? So it's sort of a joint venture in terms of the industry tells us, here's what we need a person to be able, this is the skill we're looking for, and then we, in a sense, drive that curriculum to fit what you need produced in terms of the graduate. So it varies a little bit according to the industry. For instance, that with Blue Cross and Blue Shield, obviously they have a specific to that insurance industry that they're looking for in terms of the IT. So we tend to cater it a little bit to the business and industry.
Okay, I'll just get bigger. Thank you.
In the back?
In Michigan and Pennsylvania and those areas up there are fairly industrial. They've got a combination of the businesses, companies, and the tech schools going and talking to high school juniors and seniors in the auditorium about essentially saying, you know, if you want to go to college, that's great. Depending on your situation, you may owe whatever, you know, when you get out. And average starting salary in this state for students. On the other hand, if you go into an apprenticeship program with the XYZ company, we send you to the tech school, you get an associate's degree, you get out, you don't owe any money, and you're making $60,000 a year. Apparently it changes, it's a lot, where I understand, there's a lot of things these students have never heard from their guidance instructors. And it's really boosting that, you know, trying to fill that gap with the 55-year-olds up here and run them in.
Well, I'll just share with you one of the things we have started doing with the 16 technical colleges around the state is we looked at it in terms of how do we make students more aware of the programs that we offer? If you think of it, guidance counselors across the state typically come from a 4-year background. That's how they ended up in the job that they're in. So that's sort of what they know. They don't know a lot about the technical college system. So we invite the middle and high school guidance counselors into our technical college campuses for 2 weeks in the summer to learn what we offer. What's the nursing programs all about? What's mechatronics, criminal justice programs? And we found that actually helps because they actually are a little more well-versed on what's available. Last thing I will add, what a lot of business and industries are doing now, a student you mentioned that goes in and starts work, good employee, has their associate degree. Most of your manufacturing facilities across the state now, once an employee has been there for a year and has a good record at that industry, they will pay for the 3rd and 4th year for someone to get that bachelor's degree. So it's almost like they're investing in that employee because they want to keep them there.
And that's a better engineer.
Right.
We got time for one more.
Okay. Okay.
So really, the word technical, all of my life, it had a certain sense. I wasn't smart enough to go to college or whatever, so I'm going to do something technical. But what you're describing is more like a combination of technical and community college, and I've heard that conversation is being had within the system and the branding and how you put this message out there in a big way. Could you kind of update where that is and what the thinking is currently about the branding?
Sure. Actually, our 16 technical colleges across the state are community colleges because there's components that about 1/3 of our students are in healthcare programs, nursing, rad techs, anything in the healthcare field. About another 1/3 are in your traditional technical programs that you have known for decades, and then the other 1/3 are in transfer programs to a 4-year institution. So we're serving that mission of what would be considered a community college. There's about 1,200 community colleges across the country. To be quite honest with you, it's a political issue in terms of the naming and the branding, and the reality of that is just you deal with the politics as best you can, but our mission is still enabling us to serve as a community college across the state, and we feel like we're able to do that with the technical college name. I think it's important, anytime you're attracting the big name, Boeing, Volvos, BMW, you're doing something right in the state of South Carolina, so we need to continue to produce a high-tech graduate that has very good technical skills, so it needs to continue to be a part of our technical college delivery system. But at the same time, because of the high cost of earning a bachelor's degree in the state of South Carolina, I think we will more and more become an opportunity for students to gain those first 2 years.
All right, thank you very much. And Stephen, where are you? You want to go ahead and give us next week?
Yeah, so there's a really good World Series going on right now. And speaking of the World Series, we're having the MVP of the World Series here next week, the 1960 World Series. Bobby Richardson is coming. Ray Tanner coming from the university to introduce you. So please come, please bring a guest, and
Yes, speaking of guests, we need to fill this entire room for him next week, so please invite guests. Guests are very important to this club, and it's really important to help us with our membership pipeline, so please bring guests. Let's make sure all these tables are filled next week, and we'll go ahead and close with song.